Welcome to the Journos on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin, Hugh McDonald, Andrew Smith and Alison McConnell here with me on the show. And if you want to join the football family, hit the subscribe button and you can get access to all our unique video content. It's absolutely free. And over and above that, if you want all the latest breaking news, you can download the PLZ Soccer app in the App Store and on Google Play as well. There you are, giving you as much information as I possibly can. Thank you to so many of you for following us, listening to the Journos, and the amount of people who have said they download it as a podcast and listen to it as well. We really appreciate your support. Lots to talk about. We'll talk Scotland, Steve Clarke. We'll look at Rangers. With a takeover imminent, there's always stories that emerge that suddenly Rangers have to deal with and hope that they can get the whole proposed takeover going forward. We'll look at Neil Lennon as the new manager of Dunfermline, a wee glance towards Kasper Schmeichel and some criticism he's taken at international level, and then we might even throw in Trent Alexander-Arnold for good measure. So if we can get through all that, Hugh, it'll be good going. Just as a little footnote to what happened at the weekend with Scotland, Steve Clarke had said that, you know, there's a greater percentage chance that the World Cup is where he'll say thank you and good night. Is it more a case of Scotland will say thank you and good night if he just doesn't fulfil the remit of getting us to that World Cup?
I think it'll both will happen. I actually don't think it'll get us to the World Cup. I think the collapse at the weekend, and that's what it was, just before half time and after half time, was really worrying. It was really worrying because you can play badly and lose, but there just seemed to, all the air went out of Scotland, you know, during half time.
Did you not in previous Journos shows say, I don't think we're making it to the European Championship?
Probably. Although I shouldn't have, because if I did, because the European Championships are much easier to qualify in the World Cup.
World Cup's a really difficult
one.
And do you think it's difficult now that it's Belarus, Denmark and Greece?
Yeah, because I think the big problem is you've really got to win the group.
Yep.
If you don't win the group, you're in Stoke. It's not like the European Championships where you can finish third and get in somehow.
Go on the back door.
It's going to be really, really tough. And I just thought I did say after Euros, I thought he should have gone then. I thought it would have been a good time just to say, right, enough. We've got a World Cup campaign coming. Let's get let's get a new impetus in. And then, but he had the wee renaissance after the Euros that kept him there. But I thought Sunday. I mean, I watched every second of it. I just thought how dispiriting it was.
Yeah, let's flip it then and suggest, Ali, that maybe you've got to cut him some slack on the basis that, okay, they could drop into Nations, League B, so what, they do that. But with the World Cup, as time goes on, rather than us looking at the immediacy of it approaching, is there a case to say, well, wait a minute, sometimes managers can be lucky because there are emerging talents that suddenly force their way into your thoughts? Do you know what I mean? Because a Billy Gilmore suddenly, comes into the equation. Maybe a Ben Doak, injury-free, offers them a different way to play.
Yeah, the problem is you don't have a lot of time. Now, I think there's 2 friendlies before the World Cup qualifiers get underway at the start of September. Don't have a lot of time. I think based on the evidence of Sunday, I think Scotland look spent. They look like a tired team. I think they look like a team that have gone over the course. They look stale. I thought there was a staleness about Scotland. There was a flatness about it. I thought there was a flatness about the atmosphere at Hampden too. When you think that it was 3-1, like, you really only needed 1 goal back, even with like 20 minutes to go or something, you only need 1 goal back to try and lift the crowd, get back into it. There was nothing. There was no sign of it on the park, and then within the stadium, you just felt there was a kind of meek acceptance of where Scotland were, that they were playing a better team. I hear what you're saying. I think there's almost been too much said about the absence of Ben Doak. I think we've all been excited by Ben Doak and what he's offered and the potential, but let's be honest, he's come into Scotland as a very young player. He's played a handful of games. I think there's a danger of looking towards these guys and saying these are the guys that are going to carry a campaign, that they're going to go and take you through. I heard people in the aftermath of Sunday's game talking about Lewis Morgan again, players that have been fringe players who have come in laterally to Scotland. I think there's a danger of hanging your hat on these players coming back and then carrying a campaign.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I found it absolutely astounding listening to some commentators and some pundits talking. I mean, it was just ridiculous chat about how we're missing Ben Doak. This boy's played a couple of games, you know, where he's shown flashes that he can go past somebody. But you were talking about it as if he was a saviour who'd had 30 caps under his belt, Andrew.
There are no saviours for Scotland. There are no saviours for Scotland, and all the kind of flack, and I suppose he deserves the flack this week, Clarke. Let's look at Scotland. Look at their forward line. Look at their forward line options. Look at their back line options. My God, countries with these, the paucity of options that Scotland have in these crucial areas, 2 domains of the 3 domains of the team, if you like, they're not international class. We don't have international class players to play across the back line. We've got Anthony Ralston. Look, and I think he did fine. I still think he did fine on Sunday. But he's a guy who can't get a game for Celtic. We've got Hanley. He's a guy who can't get a game in the 3rd tier of English football who's playing. And then you look at it, and look, I know that I think he scored 7 goals in Serie A this season, Che Adams. But I think we keep lauding the fact we have 4 players in Serie A. I think that says more about Serie A than it does about the Scotland players that are apparently ripping it up. Do you know what struck me as well yesterday? And we think about where are the reinforcements coming? Where's the next wave? Iceland beat Scotland.
6-1.
Scotland under 21s 6-1 last night, and Scotland were lucky to get away with that scoreline.
Yeah.
From people I know that watched it.
Yeah.
So where is our next generation? We do not produce enough good players. Pure and simply, we do not produce enough good players.
Well, I think the flip of that as well, Hugh, and this is where I think, and I try and cut. I mean, I like Steve Clarke as a person, and I think we've got to give him credit for the 2 championships that he's got to. Whether they're easy enough or not to get there, the problem I had with him, where I started to turn a little, was having witnessed, like you, sitting in that chair with the European Championships. I thought he was cautious. I thought it was almost as if not only do we have a dearth of talent, but it was almost as if he chained the talent that we do have and said, you know, don't go forward, don't be aggressive, don't be on the front foot. And we just threw away chances against Hungary that beggared belief.
Hungary was the one for me. Hungary was, you know, standing in that big park in Stuttgart watching it on the screens with Tam McManus. We just looked at each other and said, that's just dismal. This is just dismal.
But was it dismal? Maybe I'm in a kind of minority one here. Was it dismal? What he wanted to do was stay in the game. Scotland had so much control. And you're talking about throwing away chances. Is that Steve Clarke's fault? If you're making chances and throwing them away?
No, but the problem was he didn't make chances. What he did was he.
But I just mean when you're like it.
See, the thing
what he did against Switzerland, you're 15 minutes to go, and you've got a situation where Lawrence Shankland, who had scored prolifically last season, and you had James Forrest, who drove Celtic to the title, and you looked at those 2 players, one supply, one with a half chance maybe in the box, and he made substitutions which beggared belief. Now, without going over the whole European Championships and trying to dissect it, there was times when I thought to myself, listen, we've got an opportunity here to actually go and qualify. And I just thought he let it slip completely with his approach.
I thought there was a lack of will, there was a lack of ambition, there was a lack of nerve. And I look at it, and I know that you know, people say we haven't got players here and we haven't got players there. And if you're talking about Germany, Portugal, Brazil, who got pumped last night, or Argentina, whatever, you say, of course we haven't. But if you're talking about in a league, in a section where Denmark and Greece and Belarus are in it, if you said on paper, you say we've got in the team, we've got a Champions League winning fullback, we've got a centre half that plays in La Liga. We've got a midfielder who's a captain for a team in the quarter-finals of the Champions League. 2 other midfielders are pushing for a Serie A title. Another midfielder is the captain of a Serie A team going for a Champions League place, and Juventus want to sign them. Another midfielder is going to get in the EPL Team of the Year, and he plays for Bournemouth, and he's going to get in the and up front, we've got a Serie A striker.
But you look at these players, I don't think they're generally the difference makers in their club sides. Like, I'm pretty sure, no offence to Andy Robertson, but Liverpool could have found another adequate fullback and still been a Champions League team. Like, I think you look at the way that some of our players play, the McGinns, Christie's, and they're all good players and they all give it everything. Like even McTominay, but they're kind of up and at 'em players in the sense that there's not a great kind of.
Oh, there's a difference.
They're not measured.
McTominay's made a difference in
Yeah.
Napoli.
The great thing about this programme is we can all disagree on things, but
they're no strikers and they're no defenders.
No, but absolutely. But the only thing
That's
that
his spine.
we are, there's three elements to it. When you're a manager, is your overall way that you want to approach a game, which I think we're all in agreement with. He was cautious at the European Championships. The second part of it is you look and you say to yourself, the point that we're all agreeing on is we don't have strikers. We're relying midfielders, and sometimes we're relying 2 goals to maybe get a draw. And then if we get a goal ahead, first of all, we can defend it, hopefully. But unfortunately for us, we don't have half-decent centre-halves.
No.
So you're in a situation where you can't defend, you can't score the goals, and we're looking and saying, well, what's the next generation of people? Has he just been lucky enough to get a lovely purple patch of quality players? I disagree with you on Robertson. I think Robertson's been absolutely top drawer.
He's a good player. He's a good player, but it's not
he's
the
a great player for Liverpool, Andrew.
He's
a great
I think
player
his
for
longevity
Liverpool.
probably speaks for him.
He's a good player, but as I say, your left back, you don't get teams that rip it up or get into major finals because they've got a great left back.
Well, but what I'm saying to you is, while we are dissecting the problems we have, the one thing that really is good about Scotland is, and again, sometimes we're all guilty of knee-jerk with one result or an implication after it. The point here is, Billy Gilmore, I like because he takes the ball in when there's 2 or 3 around him. He'll take it. He's brave. He wants the ball. He was like Darren Fletcher when he was in a poor Scotland side. He was like Barry Ferguson. They didn't hide. So you've got him, you've got McTominay, good player. United fans still would have him at Old Trafford. And you're saying to yourself, OK, the midfield's really good, McGinn. And you say to yourself, OK, the way he plays, if you're cautious, he's not going to play with 2 strikers. He's not going to do that. Lyndon
You can't
Dykes
open
is
up
injured.
because you've not got a strong enough back line.
No, I know.
That's why you don't open up. Look, he opened up. He's moved it to 4. Look how exposed Scotland were with their 4 the other night.
Absolutely, but nothing is won or lost, Andrew, because quite simply we've qualified for 2 major championships. We've disappointed in the last one. I mean, we absolutely disappointed.
And the one before.
And the one before. But the point is,
But why are we disappointed?
the
That's what I don't
celebration was
understand.
getting there, and the next part of it is in the World Cup qualification. I'm in the camp like all of us. I don't think we'll qualify because I don't see an emerging striker, and I can't see somebody to keep the door locked at the back.
Yeah, I think that's the 2 fundamentals. I think that's the 2 weaknesses within the team. And the World Cup, to actually make it to the World Cup, you're going to have to top the group. And when you look at what Greece done to Scotland over 2 legs, you look at the quality that Denmark have got, I just don't think Scotland... I don't think it's plausible for Scotland to top the group.
Yeah,
But why don't we recognise where we are then? I agree entirely with you. Why don't we recognise where we are? Scotland are a team that can beat a Greece where if everything goes right for you on the night, you get a penalty you shouldn't have got. You
Ride your luck in the second
You ride your luck in the second half. They hit the woodwork a couple of times. You can win these games. We've done it against Austria, done it against Switzerland. I think we've won some of these games.
we beat Spain.
Beat Spain. Well, that was the kind of Halley's Comet result.
No, but
you got a Halley's Comet result.
No, but
They beat France as well in France.
It's our duty to highlight. This is the thing that you know well. It's our duty to highlight when you're looking at and analysing where we're going at the moment. It's our duty to say, listen, you can't disregard the positives when people were actually waxing lyrical. Give them a new contract, beat Spain, high as a kite, players coming in, doing well, midfielders scoring goals, obviously papering over cracks that we all knew were there. But putting it in perspective, I'm looking at it and saying to myself, we've lost to a Greece team that flattened everybody, flattened us all. But now we're looking and saying to ourselves, is there anyone coming through that can help him? And is he going to take off the shackles of cautiousness to allow us to get a chance?
I think he's flailing.
No, but
I thought the substitutions on Sunday were, almost like a resignation, though.
It was odd that he played Christie wide in the right when he's been doing so well.
His selection was odd. I mean, he plays Hanley
Was
instead.
odd. And he
plays
didn't
Hanley
play-
instead of
McKenna.
Didn't he play Ferguson as well?
Ferguson was the one that stuck out for me. I thought
Ferguson's man of the match,
Yeah.
in the
Thursday night.
previous game, and then he drops him for Kenny McLean. The other thing as well is the substitutions for a man who's incredibly cautious. It was as if he'd suddenly decided he was a sailor who had
Conway,
literally he'd
turning up
landed in Hong Kong with 6 months' pay and was going to put it all in red. I mean, it was just like unbelievable. I mean, you just said, wait a minute, this is a guy that won't bring on James Forrest and Loris Shankland when he needs a goal in Germany. Now he's bringing on a guy who probably should have been in his bed because he was about 18 or 17, whatever James Wilson is, and Tommy Conway.
I felt sorry for Wilson.
Wilson was
I felt
that?
sorry for
Was
it.
that a disaster?
We're hanging all our ambitions on a
now, Ian.
17-year-old kid who's
He looked out his depth. I know I've praised him on here, but he looked out his depth.
Greece had a 17-year-old kid that was fine.
who has a
I know,
£40 million buyout clause in his contract.
he looked good, didn't he?
Oh, he was great.
and we all know that Spain have got a 17-year-old that's
But do we?
damn decent as well, but not. Come on, that was mad.
Here's your introduction to the national
Save
team.
us.
Like we've got Denmark and Greece, and look, and if you look at it pound for pound, with the squad that Denmark will name, the squad that Greece will name, would you say Scotland have got a better squad than these countries?
No, that's fine.
Therefore, what
That's
happens
fine now.
if you don't have the players?
No, that's fine now. But what we're doing here is I'm playing the devil's advocate and saying I've got no. I mean, I'm not having a major argument with you on the fact that we're all critical of him, but it's my duty to offer the flip side and say, okay, here are the positives for the man, but the other aspect of it is we're sitting here and now that it doesn't look good, but sometimes over a 3 or 4 month period, somebody can emerge that you think changes the axis of the side. Now, I give you a situation where Ben Doak came in and looked really promising. He's got a trick. He can get past a player.
Yeah.
So suddenly everybody's thinking, finally, we've got actually a player who can go past somebody. I mean, Scotland getting to the byline and cutting it back for a striker maybe, or an on-rushing midfielder. So there's one aspect of it. By the time we get to August, who knows? Suddenly Steve Clarke could think Lennon Miller's the next man in the middle who's going to be alongside a Lewis Ferguson or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Who knows? George Hurst might go on a scoring spree. You know, or is there a centre half?
No,
is there a centre half who suddenly emerges? Do you see what I mean? It's all right. We're analysing it now, but I'm just asking the question of what we're witnessing and of what's out there. Could there be maybe one or two that changes it for him? Sometimes you look at club football. Sometimes there's a player comes in and changes the fortunes.
But the thing is, I go back to the original point where I disagree with Andrew. I think it was enough there to be competitive against Greece and Denmark.
Yeah.
Oh, they were competitive. They beat Greece 3 nights before they lost to them.
Aye, but
That's what they are. Scotland could beat Greece, or they could lose 3-0 to them. They could have beaten Hungary.
But they were beaten 3-1 over the tie. They lost 3-0 at home.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes you have a right. It was you know what was exactly the same. It was Rangers Fenerbahce. Look what Rangers did to Fenerbahce.
Yeah.
Out in Turkey. Look what Fenerbahce did to Rangers in Glasgow.
No, that wasn't the Scotland-Greece story, Andrew. There was
The Scotland-Greece story was he played the wrong the Greek manager played the wrong bloody team in the first.
But it was also as well they had
The Spanish manager played he played a ridiculous team that night against Scotland.
Well, listen, Andrew, you never believe it. Ali and I are only a metre away from you.
Sorry.
The other good thing I was going to say to you,
Sorry.
you want to hear the Greek Journos podcast. They're going tonto on Friday. They were going mental. What about the team he picked?
Scotland are a team that can beat a Hungary if with a fair wind. They can lose to Hungary. You know, like that's where they are. They're in this kind of middling zone, put it that way, which doesn't really get you to World Cups. It gets you to
Euros.
because middling teams get to Euros. Because there's about 50 teams in the Euros now, and there's only 54 European countries.
So League B is where we should be.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I mean, the analysis of it and the assessment of it is something that, Tartan Army fans who spend a lot of money following them will be looking at and
More
saying,
fool
okay,
them.
well, I don't know about you, but I mean, as a kid, I followed Scotland everywhere. I went everywhere to tournaments, over to Italy, Euro 96, tickets wherever I could get my hands on. I loved following Scotland. I was a huge Scotland fan. So I love the fact that we were in the middle of Germany. It was just tremendous, and sometimes they get a bit of stick because of their attitude of tremendous enjoyment and with the despair after the game. But it was great, and you want to see players coming through, and we want to see a manager. As Gordon Strachan said to me, better been lucky than good.
Right. I just thought as well, but I think a better fist of it could have been made of the players the other night. I thought structurally we were poor the other night.
Yeah.
We were out-coached the other night. The Greek guy made his mistakes
and then went away.
And then he went away and thought about it, and he said, I'm going to get behind the fullbacks. And if you watch all the goals, that space between the fullbacks and, by the way, a Champions League midfield. Champions League midfield, not an international midfield.
Yeah.
Everybody in that midfield is a Champions League player. The gap between that and the back four was...
By the way, they sussed out, the wee 17-year-old had sussed out Robertson. He said before the game, he said, he thought he had the beating of him.
Yeah.
And then he showed it.
Yeah,
It
it was
the
class.
first 2 goals came down that side.
Okay, I think the general consensus is we feel as if at this moment, we're up against it. We're not going to go to the World
Ghost.
Cup. Yeah. Ali, could you redirect the funds that we've been saving to try and go? We'll use it somewhere else. Anyway, let's move on to the ever impending Rangers takeover, because obviously, interestingly enough, I think Les Allen's been speaking on another podcast talking about. I think they're interviewing. Everybody's interviewing anybody who's come into contact with Andrew Kavanagh. To their credit, I think
I saw his milkman in a podcast the
no,
other
absolutely.
night.
But Les Allen, I think, it's funny. He's a jambo. I love the way people go. By the way, he's got the investors for Rangers, but he's a Hearts fan. Full marks to him because he's brought Andrew Kavanagh and the 49ers enterprise to the table to get things moving, and mentioned that as we know, the ownership blueprint now is changing dramatically, and Rangers could benefit from that if they get this over the line. I think we're now coming to that critical period, Hugh, going into April and May, where there's only so long that Rangers fans will start reading, it's at an advanced stage. No. They want to see concrete coming in, because once you get to the month of April, Hugh, season tickets, they'll be asking the questions, come on, where is this?
I think, though, what the noises in the background would suggest that certainly people within the Rangers camp expect this to happen. I think the statement that came out about supporters and the banner and that would have been heavily influenced. I'm not saying that was the only reason, but be heavily influenced with the new owners coming in. They'll want to come in with, this is what we expect. This is the way this club's going to be run. To
be fair, just to throw this into context for anyone who's maybe wondering what you were talking about, of course, UEFA have hit them with a possible, it's a suspended sentence at the moment, closure of the stadium following that clash with Fenerbahce, when some fans inexplicably, put up a banner which was viewed as racist and discriminatory, and I think the banner itself has caused Rangers to say it was shameful and embarrassing, and they put out a really strong statement criticising
life bans.
We did,
and I think that in itself told you everything about how they viewed it, Hugh. Just in case anybody didn't understand the context of the banner, and again, I'm loath to actually read it out in its full context, but when it was...
You're too woke, that's your problem.
Well, funnily enough, it says, keep woke foreign ideologies out, defend Europe. I mean, for God's sake, man, But
there's no... See,
is that a cryptic crossword clue as well as a banner?
Well, exactly, I mean, you see that banner, and to be honest with you, I don't know about you guys, but when you're watching the game and then you're monitoring everything, when I saw the banner, I thought, wow, you know, don't deflect away from Barry Ferguson, what he's trying to do. Don't be so bloody stupid to allow these people in and do that sort of. That's the type of thing that, you know, they're trying to defend the fact that they shouldn't be kettled, they shouldn't be searched, you know, they should be allowed to go into games. And then you get that. But the people who are going to invest you, I don't think they've been happy with it, but I think they'll be so far down the line in the numbers. They're number crunchers.
I think the interesting thing, there won't be an impediment.
No, it's not a deal breaker.
It's not a deal breaker. But I think the interesting thing about it is the strength of the statement, because I think this has got influences out. And the reason I think that is, if you remember back to the Fenway group with Liverpool, completely different case. But it was when Suarez was accused of racism, the Liverpool players came out and said, we support Suarez. Fenway went really quickly into that and says, no, you don't.
Yes, absolutely.
No, you don't. This is the party, like, this is that we're not accepting any of this. We're going to wait for the judgment. And, you know, they're very, see these guys that are coming in the Fenway group, I think is the benchmark for anybody that comes in. But these guys are like, in terms of professionalism, in terms of the way they make deals, in terms of the way they deal with the noise about football, they're at the top level. They're not wee guys coming in off this. These are real professional businessmen, and they'll know how they want the club to be run. They'll know the principles they want it to be run under,
just modern and inclusive. That's what.
I mean, I think the Rangers statements. There's two statements. The statement you ran
last week,
yes,
where the guy said, if you don't agree with all this, go and support another team.
Exactly.
Yes.
I know. No, look, wow. I know.
Wow.
And then yesterday, lifetime bans. People that held up the thing.
But I think they also went on to say, Ali, and
it's the strongest it's ever been.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's the line for me in the sand of where the tide may be turning, because there are a number of supporters who just want to go and see Rangers, want to support Rangers, but they also mentioned in the statement, you know, that they want to try and make fans aware that they've got to try and stop singing these illicit songs. You know, and they've got to move on. I mean,
they'll have to, because see if they continue, especially in a European game, they're going to end up with part of the stadium closed. The Copland Road stand will be closed. It'll just take one more infringement of that, and it'll be closed. Also, but apart from the immediate sanction of that, for a club who are now going to go into the hands of a very corporate business group, they will want to distance themselves from that.
Absolutely.
In every possible sense, and they will want to be seen to distance themselves from that, because it's all about brand management, about the people that you're bringing in. You cannot possibly carry that baggage into a modern world.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. But of course, I think Rangers fans would like to see it happen sooner rather than later, before once again they have to dig deep into their pockets and commit themselves to season tickets, not knowing what the future holds in the summer, and whether Barry Ferguson will be the manager or someone else as part of the group that they feel is the man to lead them into next season and beyond. Always good for comment on that. Over and above that, someone connected with Rangers not that long ago who was viewed as the main man, David Murray. Remember him? Sir David Murray has released a book. I think it's coming out in the summer. It's called Metal. It's going to look back over his career, obviously, as you would imagine, since it's from David Murray's perspective. He will obviously give you maybe a greater insight into what was going on behind the scenes. But I just wonder what his legacy and how he will be remembered by Rangers supporters first and foremost, and then by the greater public and journalists alike on his legacy, if indeed there is a legacy. Well, I can only hope that I'm speaking to people across a broad spectrum who can look at in the cold light of day at the facts. The facts are undeniable, Hugh, and I just wonder, you know, I expect anybody who covers us, depending on, as Andrew says, their particular bias. And by the way, when he was at his peak, there were some people who were quite happily taking 30 pieces of silver to listen to anything that he fed them. But the Rangers fans, I think a lot of them are angry.
I think it's really interesting because I spoke to I'll not name him, but a very famous Rangers fan, and I was talking to him about money. He says, "Aye, but he gave us 9 in a row." Right, so there'll be that element.
I spoke to somebody as well that said exactly the same.
So there'll be that element. But I think that slowly it's dawning because of the extent of the domestic domination of Celtic. I think it's dawning on even the most generally oblivious Rangers fan that where the Murray legacy has left them. And the Murray legacy has left, I think, if you want to sum it up, a picture of him and Craig White in a pound coin. That would be my summation.
Yeah. The other thing about it, and overall, when you have to look at his period of just about 2 decades where he was in charge and very much the powerhouse in Scottish football. I mean, he had a grip on Rangers, but he had a major grip on the game in our country, and of course, I would say some journalists as well who pandered to him. But one man who didn't pander to him, I was looking up a great article. It was in one of your papers that you work for, Hugh, in the Herald, and obviously the Scotsman did a great feature on him, and Andrew will shed light on an interview you had with him. But Hugh Adam, who raised a lot of money when he worked at Rangers for the club, he warned back in 2002 that this was not sustainable and David Murray's reckless spending would take this club to bankruptcy. It was a tremendous insight from a man that was respected by all but ridiculed and isolated for it by coming out with that statement at the time.
I think it's a classic example of someone having too much power within a club without having checks and balances within a club. I think, that the old philosophy of if you Celtic spend a fiver, we'll spend a tenner. The dream of just throwing money at the team to go and make an imprint on the Champions League. This desire to go and get a European trophy. I think it brought Rangers to its knees. You saw what it done. You saw the damage. You saw the lasting legacy is the last 20 years. Since 2000, if you look at the trophy count between Celtic and Rangers and where Rangers have been in the sheer dominance of Celtic on and off the park. Even if this takeover goes in and is successful and Rangers get back to a financial level of competing on an equal footing with Celtic, the damage that's been done across the last 20 years is huge, absolutely huge. And you can't have one without the other. You can't look at David Murray's legacy and the 9 in a row years without then looking at the subsequent years that followed it.
Yeah, and of those facts, Hugh Adam was just looking at it from number crunching, and he said, it's consistent losses, it's 80 million in debt, it's investors who've lost huge amounts because he had this charismatic dream that he was selling, but in the end, big companies lost lots of money.
He said to me, he said, David Murray's not a businessman. He said, he's just not a good businessman. He said, he's an impresario. He said that impresarios are for the theatre, not for football. And his killer line to me was, he says, in years to come, David Murray will be remembered for doing more harm than good to Rangers. This is prescient, isn't it? We're talking 23 years ago, this guy, saying this. Look, and he was absolutely right. Although you almost have to look at Murray. I think you have to look at, there's two stewardships of Rangers. He lost his head, Murray, because he was feted to an extent. But see, if you look at back in it, in fairness to Rangers and Murray, see, for the first 6 of Rangers' 9 in a row years, they turned a profit. They turned a profit because if you remember, they didn't have too many big signings. I think it was once, it was like Laudrup and Gascoigne kind of changed something. That was signings possibly beyond what their business model could tolerate.
Yeah.
But they just got intoxicated by... people knew Rangers right across Europe.
Yeah, because the first 3 of the 9 in a row, David Holmes and Lawrence Marlborough, were very much the driving force of the transition.
Yeah, so it's almost like when Celtic got themselves together, that's when Murray lost his mind with the EBTs and the misuse of EBTs and the ruinous nature of that tax wheeze, we might want to call it. And what I still can't, what he'll never be able to explain, and I'm sure he won't explain in this book, They knew from 2008 that the jig was up with EBTs. What people do when they have this kind of on the line or maybe over the line tax scheme is, what you do is you put funds away just in case the HMRC catch up with the loop, they close the loophole. You always have to, even when you're having tax efficiencies, you have to have the money there just in case HMRC catch up with you.
But that was the big problem.
But they didn't. They were winning the league. They won the league 3 years in a row, so they got into the Champions League. So they had all that Champions League money, and they didn't secrete the money that would cover the EBTs. So when the tax bomb hit, they'd know where to go. It was the end.
The other thing that didn't help matters in the whole perspective of it all is when you get to, a global downturn, which affected so many companies across the world, and it affected his Murray International Metals. Suddenly, you have a situation where you've got a bank eventually who's, I think Lloyd's took over, and that was the key moment for me, where basically David Murray had that, position where he had to say, well, listen, do I keep my own business that I built up and still keep Rangers? And the bank's basically said, you've got to offload Rangers and now, or the rest of it might go. Now, that must have been the most painful part of it, because he's got nowhere to go, Hugh.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going to jump?
Sorry, I was just like Gavin Marsden. The credit tap was turned off.
Yes.
Once the financial crash.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the end.
Well, the thing about this, Alice and I were just before the show started, was this brings back PTSD, this conversation.
EBT, PTSD.
Yeah.
CVA.
CVA.
When suddenly, in my 50s, I suddenly had to become a financial
I know.
journalist.
Yeah. Well, I actually was good friends with David Glenn of PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Oh,
I spoke to him every day.
Whose phone rang consistently for a
Yeah, I
year.
always remember at one point I was shouting over to the desk about the LIBOR rate, right?
Oh, God. Yeah.
And I realised that I'd completely, utterly lost it and was now in the brink of a nervous breakdown. But I did have, shall we say, a source very, very close to Lloyds Bank. And they made it very, very clear to me he made it very, very clear to me all the time that the Rangers had to go off the books. They were just so.
And that's why I'm interested to see what Murray's taking on it. If there is anything insightful, and again, we could go back over it. I mean, I was trying to actually say, when I said to you at the start, the facts are undeniable. Losses consistently, huge amounts of money spent to chase this European dream of the European Cup, which he failed. Failed attempts, obviously, for an Atlantic League, which told you that he was looking for other avenues of money. Huge debts incurred in that Dick Advocat era when he was buying players that you're just thinking. And then from there, as Andrew pointed out, the EBT scheme, which had a devastating tax bill, which a lot of players and managers are feeling the pain from. The big and the small tax case were hovering over him. And then, of course, here it is for £1 when he was advised not to deal with Craig White. Craig White had, as you remember, had this
Wealth off the radar.
Wealth off the radar. Wealth off the radar.
Coming in with a war
You see what I mean by certain journalists that you read. But that whole aspect of it, Hugh, is where they are undeniable facts. And I'm really interested to see how he gives you it from his perspective. I mean, it'll be totally different.
Well, I mean, but the whole thing about the smokes and mirrors of it is like, even toward and we're talking about the death knells of this story, when, there's a £1 coin going for a Scottish institution and all this. I had this conversation with an editor. I'd just written a story, and the editor rather patiently was explaining. He said, but Hugh, David Murray's a brilliant businessman. And I said, well, yeah, but I said, I'm a feckless idiot when it comes to money. I says, but I've got £38 in the bank. David Murray's tens of millions in debt. Does that make me a better businessman than David Murray?
Yeah.
There was still this charisma and perception around Murray that somehow everything would be okay and somehow this deal was,
Yeah, the only problem in this whole equation, and you know, and I hate to throw a spanner in the works on this. And this is this is not a situation where we're going to regurgitate everything that happened. It's looking and saying, I wonder how this book is going to portray it.
Yes.
Because if you're talking about business, listen, there is a president with about so many numerous companies that have all failed for millions and billions, who's in control of one of the most powerful nations on this earth, and he'll look and go, well, so what? You know, that's the way. And lots of businessmen will go, well, I failed there, I've got this, I've got debt there. So what? I'll write it off. That's the way business works. They work at a different level from you and I.
No, but how is he going to justify the bank, Murray's business empire? There was 300 million that was never paid back to the bank that they owed.
Well, listen,
300 million.
Listen,
it was a quarter. I think it was a quarter that the whole reason why we had to bail out the bank, because they owed so much. But a quarter it was to do with Murray's business empire.
Yeah, but again, this is the point that links us back into, and there's no point in suddenly discussing and assessing it in a business sense, because with all due respect to you, although you've spoken to Hugh Adam, we all had to phone various people along the way. The one thing that I remember as head of sport at Radio Clyde, once I started listening to footballers telling me about accountancy, I thought, the game's up here. Bugger all about it. And this club, this club is heading to the edge of a cliff.
Right.
No, but I'm not.
It's a one-way ticket to Palookaville.
I'm not in any way disgracing or trying to be derogatory towards any journalist, because
I spent hours reading about it.
A journalist's job is to report with the preparation and the reading up on various things. But you and I look at it differently from a businessman. Our perspective on things, and we're trying to deal with facts on it, it'll be different from a businessman.
Which is what David Murray would tell you, because he used to regularly tell journalists to say, look, you've got a lot of debt here. No, this is just the way. It's a high debt, high risk kind of enterprise, but it's okay because you can move the debt, and that's what he did. He moved debts around various different kind of arms of his empire.
I'm interested to see what he says in it. The reason why I brought the whole thing up is because sometimes people can rewrite history. This one is unfolding to a group of Rangers reporters who look and see the line in the sand and think, no way will anybody be allowed to rewrite history on this. They understand the legacy. They feel the pain of it.
Well, the history, when we're talking about facts, we can interpret history, right? And everybody can interpret history from different viewpoints and different perspectives. There are certain things that are irrefutable in history. You can say, the first day that war was declared, and you can argue about why it started, but you can go to facts. And the facts of the matter are, Rangers went into liquidation. They were bought for £1. The last 14 titles, 13 of them have gone to, they've been overtaken as the most successful club in Scotland. These are all facts, these are all arithmetic, that people, and Rangers fans are looking at that, and they felt that. They experienced that. They just didn't read it in some book. They were standing there when this was happening, and you don't have to go into Rangers fans, you just have to talk to your mates that are Rangers fans and see the level of, the level of hurt.
Yeah. No, like as Hugh Adams said, that's the epitaph, isn't it? David Murray did more harm than good for Rangers.
Yeah.
That's my conclusion for it.
It'll be interesting to see.
It's impossible to argue with that.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see.
Oh, I think there are plenty of people would.
No, but it'll be interesting to see how many people take extracts from the book and then try and rewrite history on it. I'm wondering what his insight will be. I'll look at it, I'll read it, and then obviously, will it be a conflict of where many journalists who investigated this whole thing or reported on it, will it be a conflict where they say, well, wait a minute, his perspective on it is totally different from the reality?
Or whether it's a PR exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting. But anyway.
But what about the post, Peter, about, like somebody said, about when you read the book, there'll be sentences moved to different chapters, certain sentences will be moved to different chapters.
Well, again, it's all to do with interpretation. and I can't wait to see. I think the most important people who will read it are Rangers fans who think, no, painful, 9, I think you're right, Andrew, some Rangers fans go, 9 in a row. That's fine, but there's a lot of Rangers fans who look at it and say, the pain of what happened to the club, and then the long road back, and it's been a long, long road of mismanagement elsewhere when they eventually were taken over from Craig White and beyond. And I think a lot of people have got a case to answer. But I'm going to move on, because the greater the breathing of Andrew, I can tell he's going to spontaneously come.
No, sorry,
we
no.
could do an hour and a half with him on this show.
Well, I lived it for so long. No, I lived it for so long.
We all did. Some of us left the company we were working for because it was going to blow my brains out. It was an incredible story that unfolded.
But the one thing that David Murray will cling on to for dear life, I'm sure, in this book, is that he wasn't there when Rangers went in administration and subsequently liquidation. It was like the pin was out the hand grenade, but he handed it to Craig White.
Yes,
and he ran the other way.
And that's well, I think that's an interesting point, and I think that's the other part.
That's what he'll cling on to.
Yeah,
guarantee it.
Can't wait to see. I'm going to hang on till it maybe drops in price, Hugh. Anyway.
99p Kindle.
Yes, absolutely. You know me so well, Ali. Yeah, I'm hanging on for the pound one. Neil Lennon's the new manager of Dunfermline. A couple of points I want to get in before we finish. Neil Lennon's the new manager of Dunfermline. Interestingly enough, you know those moments when we're all having a cup of tea or you're having a beer with your mates and you're going, he's not going to take the Dunfermline job. He's looking for... He knows he wants one last job, but it needs to be right. It's a short-term deal at Dunfermline to try and keep them in the
7 games
championship.
left.
Yeah. So there's the short-term part of it. He did say that he likes what the board and the owner had to say that really heavily influenced him. So I wonder if there's a long-term future in this one, you know, and this love relationship will continue.
It was an interesting one. I think a few of us might have expected that he would have hung around for something different. I think he's obviously desperate to get back in, maybe a bit of fear of not getting back in if you don't take something quickly. Be interesting to see how it plays out over the next 7 games, and then whether or not, obviously his first remit is to keep them up. He's got to keep them in the league, and then there might be a bigger picture around just reviving the fortunes of a team that has historically, you know, a great prestige within Scottish football, and ultimately maybe taking them back up to the top flight. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think so much will depend over the course between now and the end of the season how they fare. Third manager in one season, it doesn't look good for them as a club. So he'll obviously want to go in and get a tune out of them. But yeah, I think I was amongst many who'd have been surprised at him taking it.
Yeah, well, he's taken it. I don't think he'll. If somebody phones him and says, "By the way, I don't want him playing on Saturday," I think Neil will just go phone down, you know, disregard it. He has to pick a team. He also, if he goes beyond the summer, will decide who comes in that door. It certainly won't be some of the people that have been picking the players for that squad of late.
Recruitment was very all right. I actually wasn't too surprised that he took the job. And you know something, there wasn't anything he said to me. I met him at Kelty one day. I was out doing the Kelty game. And just his passion that day, and you could see he was like a fish out of water. It was like the way we would be in a newsroom, whereas you're watching those people getting stories and that, and everybody said, "You can't go near the computer though, just watch." You know, it was it was. Yeah. And he never said it, but I just said, I got this guy. In fact, I said to somebody later, I said, he's desperate to get back, and that's what he wants to do. And by the way, but all jobs that you get with 7 games of the season to go, it's a mess. Yeah. You know, they're not going to say we're trying to qualify for the Champions League. We'll just sack the manager.
But with 7 games left, Hugh, he needs Ayr United and Livingston like a hole in the head. That's the 2 games coming up.
He hopes it's 7 games. He hopes it's 7 games because 7 games means he's not in a playoff.
Yes.
That's what he hopes, because he doesn't want it to be 9 games or whatever, and he's playing a team for the lower leagues that are desperate to get up into the Championship.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but people are my age, and I go to Dunfermline quite a lot with that on the road thing I do. And I remember I was there when they were playing St Pauli in a friendly, and there was a big crowd there. There was about 8,000. Because you look at it, you go,
they're one of our top 12. They're definitely. If you were handpicking a top flight,
if you were
they would be there.
If you were doing an NFL franchise and said, right, here's the teams we have to have, Dunfermline would be one of them.
Definitely. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Listen, of those 7 games, I did mention that he's got Ayr United and Livingston.
I'll be there on Saturday.
But he's also got, after that, Hamilton. and he's got a game in hand, but Hamilton are just 2 points above them. That's the one where I think he can actually nail it. You know.
Was that with the dove from above coming down there?
It was a bit Vic Reeves. No, that's my phone.
It was Neil saying, by the way,
That's my phone
goes from the right man for the job.
That's my phone reminding me I'm going for lunch with one of my mates. How bad is that?
Do you know, look, it's just what you say. Like, he almost seems to get a kind of a better colour in his. I was just watching your rushes there from his press conference. He looks great. You know, it's almost as if it's almost
if you ever
there
talk
that
to
he
him,
breathes his football.
Well, some of our people, some of our journalists and all that, say, why he's a multi-millionaire, why does he need it? And I said it doesn't matter. People, millionaires or people who've been successful in life have a craving to you still you want to contribute, you want to do it, you know.
Yes.
This is a guy who stood in front of 60,000 fans going mental, watching Celtic beat Barcelona. Do you think you just walk away from that and go, well, I'll just go down to the gym today, or I'll pop into Lidl's and see what's in their shelf, or go to the library and see what's the new... I mean, these guys... Larry, since he was a kid, has been built on football competitiveness.
Yes.
And it's not this... If you talk to any footballer, any manager as well, it's the ambience of it. If you talk to anybody at all, being in that... And he's been in it. He'll believe in himself totally because he's
as he should.
As he should.
As he should.
I've managed in Champions League games. I've won titles. Why can I not get a gig?
Yeah.
What a great season he had. Last time was the championship. Like, people had tried before him. Like, they couldn't get Hibs up. He got them up.
Yeah.
He's the guy that made the difference for Hibs.
Listen, I'm slightly biased. We're friends. He's worked here, and I wish him well. I hope he really does well, and I hope he has a long-term future there at Dunfermline because he's a really good coach.
Well, that's the interesting point, Pierre, because it happens in football that we put people into boxes and we say, oh, Lennon will get in there and he'll sort them out and he'll give them a good talent in it. He is a top coach.
Yes.
You can see it coming through in his punditry as well. He knows he knows how to set up teams. He knows how to go about it. And again, he can manage a set of players, because I always think that he's the kind of guy that has that pragmatism in him to say, like, this is the hand I've dealt, and this is the deal I've got to do with that. And I think the Barcelona game was the acme of that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, that's one end of the table. Just a little brief, flirtation with the top end of the table. And your thoughts, Ali? Livingston managed again to beat Falkirk. But there was one great line that came out from the press conference. David Martindale said, I think the chances of getting into the Premiership next season, if you do finish second, are very probable. Now, I think Falkirk are going to win the league, but I think Livingston are going to be in the playoff. No disrespect to Ayr United or Partick Thistle, who I'm writing off in it, but it was a telling line because it said to me, Davy thinks he can take the second bottom team.
I think right now you would, depending obviously who it's going to be, but you're looking just now and you're thinking, is it Dundee? I think Livingston are awkward to play against. I think whoever they get, I think it's always, when you get to that stage, I think it's always slanted in favour of the top flight team staying in the league, because you can have so many games in the playoff games. But I think Livingston would make life awkward for any of them.
Yeah, I don't think there's too many who's going to disagree with that. Would you?
I thought Livingston would win the league, and I thought that.
So did I, but I bet it.
Because I've watched them a couple of times. I watched them against Falkirk this season, and I watched McCollum, and I thought they'll reel Falkirk in. Another great McDonald production.
So did I. I was the same.
Because what I liked about them was, like, they had real. Martindale's a top coach.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of noise about him. We know all that. Martindale's a good coach.
Yeah, well, the Falkirk, I made the mistake of saying to one of the Falkirk directors, I watched them against Cove Rangers and they played some really lovely football, and he looked and he just tore strips off me. They didn't play football against us. And I said, what? He says, well, they didn't play football against us. He says, they just came and absolutely physically battered them. Yeah. And I thought to myself, well, that's great credit to David Martindale. He's just changed the tactics.
Horses for courses, as Jock used to say.
He's got in his team. He's got quality in his team, Martindale.
Yeah, absolutely has. He's got two. I mean, Ryan McGowan
and at that level. McGowan's a lower level Premiership player.
Danny Wilson can pass a ball. And he's got Macaulay Tate on loan from Hearts.
Exactly, and he's also got Stevie May up front. Could still get a tune out of him.
Yeah.
There's bits and pieces all over that team. Shinnie's a good player.
Yeah, we talk about the journos at times, and I love listening to the many guests that we have on, including yourself, Andrew.
Sure.
And including our... Well,
I'm joking,
I do,
I'm joking.
but you're the only journalist that comes on. My left ear is burning because I think you were born on a helicopter. But I've got to ask you this. We have a responsibility, to try and offer balance. And sometimes, we stray into areas where we don't cover ourselves in glory. And you have to do a lot of soul searching. And I thought the story this morning about a Danish journalist, they've demanded an apology from the Danish PFA about his criticism of Kasper Schmeichel. Now, there are people who think his time's up as the international goalkeeper. And this particular Danish journalist wrote an article talking about his weight, fat-shaming him, and compared him to like a child with polio. And I'm thinking, it's just terrible.
It's despicable. It's a despicable well, you know what I mean. It's ableist for a start, but it just makes you feel. It's awful. It's awful to.
He should
talk
apologise to you.
Oh,
He should apologise.
By the way, he's digging in.
By the way, there is something I think you can separate that from saying is Schmeichel's conditioning everything it could be. Are you allowed to say that? No, are you not allowed to even say that?
I think, see, if you're a
It's a
professional,
different question.
I think if you're a professional athlete and somebody's looking at you and saying, like, I've been in this story before because I once did it about a tennis player, and I think I was.
Was that a female tennis player?
It was.
And see, that's very difficult. Yeah.
And it was, and ended up the tennis player came out and actually, in later life backed up what I was saying at the time, that she was out of condition, she hadn't been training well, she'd had problems. But it was something I felt had to be addressed, that she was out of condition. You could see it on court. She was losing matches in final sets and things like that, and I thought, well, there's a reason for this.
Yeah.
Now, it's very delicate to go into that, but I think if you're a professional athlete, your conditioning is a justifiable area of
but
complaint.
not to
And
speak
it's difficult.
not
I
to
know
speak
that.
about it that way. I once
And the
wrote,
polio thing, I don't even get the reference.
no, I don't get it either.
But he saved a penalty. He saved a penalty against Ronaldo. His performances for Celtic, at times he's made some.
He made the
brilliant
difference in the
saves.
Champions League.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah.
He made the difference in
I
the
mean,
Champions League.
he's the equivalent of Joe Hart. He's managed to, provide Celtic with a seamless,
Superior to Joe Hart. I think he's superior to Joe.
Well, there's a credit to it. I just think the overall thing that I was trying to say, Andrew and Alison, there's a way to
It's
report.
a really clumsy way
It was.
to
Really is, isn't
reference where he is physically.
once
I think there's another. You can do it in a way that's maybe not quite as offensive.
I wouldn't have
say,
done. Looking back now, what I did to the tennis player, I wouldn't do that again. I would have. I thought I was being kind of quite. What's the word for it? Discreet about it, or I wasn't being over the top about it. Quite restrained.
Measured, correct.
Measured. But I look back and I say, nah.
Yeah, because
that now.
I've had a couple of those. I wouldn't write it now, but I remember Ali McCoy's last game for Kilmarnock. I was actually at the game, and I said, McCoy's backside's now got its own postcode. So you can't quite say things like that. But I remember writing about Kevin James. Do you remember Kevin James?
Old guy,
He was 6'8", and I said he was playing for Airdrie, and I said he's got all the mobility of a Dalek climbing the Eiffel Tower, and his mum phoned me, really upset.
Yeah.
She'd read it, and see after that, and I thought, well, these are people's feelings. It's so easy to be so dismissive about people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good. I mean, listen, it's interesting to hear you being reflective on it, and you also, Hugh, talking about it and saying, well, maybe I could have gone about it a different way. I wouldn't do it again. I think over a period of time, I'm not suggesting for a minute this Danish journalist is going to be browbeated into it. He has to realise the error of his ways and the way he's gone about it. But I thought it was poor. Just one little footnote to finish the show in 40 odd seconds. Trent Alexander-Arnold, pre-contract, £13,240,000 a week. Ali at Real Madrid for 5 years. What a deal that is.
It is. I can see it's a good deal. You can see it's a good deal, but Liverpool fans, I think, are up in arms. You know, I just think it's just the nature of football fans that they never, there's no common sense really applied to it. It's an emotional connection that's going to be severed.
Well, once you get a free contract in the summer, that's what you get to do. You get all the money for yourself. So he's a shrewd cookie. And he'll go into a Real Madrid side with his friend Jude Bellingham and, of course, Mbappe and so many of them who will never have to worry about hitting those 4 digits on their cash line card again.
The old footballers in the day used to go and try and open a pub as a licensee.
Yes, absolutely.
Open a newsagents.
Still enough a bit roughy. Great to listen to you guys and your experience as ever and your opinion. Hopefully you enjoyed our chat. If you did indeed enjoy it, don't forget to share the podcast with everybody, tell your friends, and also hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Thank you for listening today to Hugh McDonald, Andrew Smith, Alison McConnell, and from myself, Peter Martin. Thank you also for watching the Journos.